The apartment smelled faintly of fresh plaster and something older, something forgotten. Adil stood in the hallway for a moment longer than he needed to, fingers brushing the edge of the door frame, listening to the quiet sounds of a city in slow motion beyond the window. Inside, the room waited half covered in drop cloths, a K ladder tilted toward the ceiling, and a bucket of paint resting like an invitation. Rayyan emerged from the kitchen. Sleeves rolled, a streak of white paint already across his cheek. "You came," he said, not quite surprised, not quite casual. "I said I would," Adil replied, stepping inside and closing the door behind him. The click was soft, but it settled into the silence like a stone in water. They hadn't seen each other in nearly a year. Not since the awkward messages faded, and birthdays passed with nothing more than emojis and a sense of something left unsaid. But when Rayyan had called last week saying he was repainting his bedroom and could use an extra pair of hands, Adil had said yes before fully understanding why. Now, standing in the place where they'd once studied late into the night, argued over music, shared the kind of laughter that lingered in walls, Adil wondered if he'd made a mistake. Rayyan handed him a roller. "Still remember how to do this?" Adil smirked, taking it. "I wasn't the one who painted my ceiling lemon yellow in college." Bold choices, Rayyan said, grinning, and they both laughed. It sounded like it belonged to a version of themselves from years ago. They worked in silence at first, the kind that wasn't empty but observant. The strokes of paint were rhythmic, soothing, and the room slowly transformed from a dull, aging beige to a soft, clean gray. Sunlight slanted through the blinds, turning dust into silver. "You never told me why you moved back here," Adil said eventually, dipping his roller in the tray. Rayyan didn't answer right away. He focused on a patch near the window, careful, deliberate, needed a reset. Some things ended. Adil paused, but didn't push. He didn't ask about some things. He didn't ask if it meant a person. Instead, he asked, "Do you like it here again?" Rayyan shrugged. "It's quiet, familiar." Familiar. That word sat heavily between them. The scent of the paint grew stronger, and so did the closeness. Not physical at first, but in the way their movements began to sync. The way they paused at the same time. How their eyes sometimes met when they didn't mean them to. Once, as Adil reached for the paint tray, his hand brushed Rayyan's. It was just a touch, fleeting, but he felt it in his chest like something unraveling. Rayyan looked at him for a second longer than necessary. Adil glanced away. "You still seeing someone?" There was the briefest hesitation. "No, not really." A vague answer. But maybe it wasn't vagueness, was protection. They worked a little longer. The sunlight shifting golden, the shadows stretching. It felt almost suspended from time, as if the outside world paused just for this. There was comfort in that, and also danger. Adil felt his guard lowering with each passing minute. when they finally stepped back, sweat damp on their necks and color blooming clean across the walls, Rayyan exhaled. Better, right? Adil nodded. Lighter. He looked around, but something in Rayyan's expression held him. He was still, unusually so, eyes unreadable. Then, quietly, he walked to the door and shut it. The sound barely audible, but the silence that followed was deafening. Adil's breath caught. The room felt smaller now, intimate in a way it hadn't before. Rayyan leaned against the wall. Arms crossed. I was going to do this alone, he said, eyes fixed on some invisible point between them. But I kept thinking about you. Adil said nothing. The weight of unspoken years sat in his throat. Rayyan smiled faint, sad, or maybe just tired. You always made things feel clearer, even when you didn't know you were doing it. Adil felt the words in places he'd long tried to ignore. Places he had painted over himself. He wanted to say something. He wanted to ask why now, why after all this time, but instead he said, "The room looks good." Rayyan tilted his head. "Yeah," he said, "it does." The moment should have ended there. It would have been easy to turn away, to carry the bucket out, to pretend none of this mattered more than the paint on the walls. But they stood there, in the stillness of a room they'd just transformed. And neither made a move to leave. It was something about the closed door. Something about the way Rayyan looked at him like he wanted to say Morboot wasn't ready. Adil didn't press. He simply stood there, breathing in the scent of change, waiting for whatever came next. And outside, the light continued to fade. The evening settled in slowly, folding itself around the room like a worn blanket. The fresh coat of paint glowed softly in the amber light, turning the walls into something more than just a color. They looked like memory, like something half remembered and half hoped for. Adil sat on the floor, legs stretched out, a glass of water cupped between his palms. Rayyan lay beside him, one arm behind his head, eyes on the ceiling as if reading thoughts written in the faint shadows. Neither of them spoke for a while. The silence didn't feel heavy, but it wasn't light either. It had texture, a quiet friction, as though both were waiting for the other to open a door they'd kept locked too long. You didn't ask what ended, Rayyan said eventually. His voice barely more than a murmur. Adil glanced at him. Didn't think you'd want to talk about it? Rayyan gave a dry chuckle. No one ever does until it's already over. Then they can't stop. Adil waited. Rayyan turned his head, eyes catching Adil's. His name was Arman. We were together for 2 years, lived together, shared groceries, stupid fights over dish soap, the works, and he cheated, repeatedly, with someone he called just a friend. Rayyan looked away. One night, I found messages. The next morning, he was gone. Didn't even take his charger. Adil processed the words slowly. Hadn't known. Rayyan was in a relationship. There had been hints over the years, vague mentions, but nothing clear. Nothing like this. "I'm sorry," he said, and he meant it. Rayyan shrugged. "I don't need pity. He paused, pressing his palm flat against the floor. "I think I forgot how to talk to people who don't want anything from me." Adil watched him, eyes tracing the line of his jaw. The way he blinked slowly like sleep was calling from somewhere far off. "Why me then?" he asked. "Why call me after all this time?" Kia. Rayyan's lips twitched. Not quite a smile. "Ku, you never asked for more than I could give, even when I wanted you to." The words hit something raw inside Adil. He looked down at his hands, the faint blue vein lines beneath his skin, the old scar near his wrist. He remembered nights, years ago, staring at his phone, thumb hovering over unsent messages, always deleting before sending. He'd thought it was restraint. Maybe it had been fear. "I used to think we could have been something," he said quietly. "But I didn't want to ruin what we had. So I told myself it was just ... admiration." Rayyan turned on his side to face him. "You don't admire someone the way you looked at me that summer before you left for university." Adil swallowed. The memory rising sharp and whole that summer. The night by the lake. Music from someone's car in the distance. Their shoulders touching for just a second too long. He didn't respond. He couldn't. Rayyan's hand reached out slowly, fingers brushing against Adil's arm. Not holding, just touching. It was light, almost apologetic, but it sent a quiet tremor through Adil's chest. "I missed this," Rayyan whispered. "Us. You're still picking up the pieces from something else," Adil said, his voice low, careful. "I'm not here to be your rebound." Rayyan looked at him with something unreadable. "You think I don't know that?" Adil stood, walking to the window, drawing in a deep breath. The glass was cool beneath his fingers, and the streetlights had started to flicker on. One by one, like little reminders that time hadn't stopped just because they had. Behind him. Rayyan stayed quiet. Adil turned. "I don't know what you want from me, and I'm not sure you do either. I just wanted you here. Why now?" Rayyan's voice cracked the silence. "Because when everything else broke apart, you were the only thing I thought about that didn't hurt." The confession hung in the air, soft and sharp all at once. Adil felt it settle in his lungs like a breath he wasn't sure he could exhale. He walked back slowly, sat down beside Rayyan again. They didn't touch it. Not this time. Rayyan leaned his head back against the wall. "Maybe this is selfish. Maybe I just wanted something that felt real for one night." Adil looked at him. "Really looked. Then don't lie to me." "Not even a little." Sarum held them again, quietly. Adil wasn't sure what they were, old friends, almost lovers, people circling something unnamed, but in that moment, he knew this wasn't over. Whatever had begun when that door closed still had its shape to take. Outside. The sky darkened further, and neither of them reached for the light. The night stretched on, slow and deliberate. Shadows pooled in the corners of the room, softening the edges of things. The only sound was the hum of the city just beyond the closed windows, a quiet lullaby of distant traffic and muffled voices. Inside, Adil and Rayyan sat in that stillness, suspended somewhere between comfort and uncertainty. They'd moved from the floor to the bed. Not out of boldness, but exhaustion. The paint fumes, the emotions, the heaviness of memories, they had all settled like dust on their shoulders. The mattress was stripped bare, its surface cool and clean, untouched by sheets or promises. They didn't lie close, but not far either. Just enough space between them to leave room for questions. Do you ever think about how different everything could have been? Rayyan asked, voice soft. All the time, Adil said. I used to imagine you'd call, Rayyan continued. When you got to university, that you'd tell me you missed me, that we could try. Adil turned onto his side, facing him. I wanted to, then why didn't you? Because I didn't trust myself, he said after a beat. And I didn't want to want something that wouldn't want me back. Rayyan exhaled. That's the thing though. I think I did. I just didn't know how to say it. And then, life happened. There. It was again life. That vague, tidal force that washed away opportunities before they had the chance to breathe. Careers, cities, partners, all the distractions that had pulled them further from the quiet ache they'd once ignored. Rayyan sat up, rubbing his face. With both hands. Maybe this is a mistake. Adil didn't move. It doesn't feel like one. But it might be. Does everything have to be perfect to be worth something? Rayyan stared at the wall. No, but it should be honest. Heavier this time. A siren wailed in the distance, a sharp interruption to the softness of their confessions. Rayyan stood and walked to the window, arms crossed over his chest. He didn't speak, but Adil could feel the weight radiating off him. So much unsaid, so much held in. He rose too, joining him, but not too close. Just enough, I'm not asking you for a relationship. Rayyan finally said, I don't have the right, not now. Adil shook his head. I don't want a relationship. Not from someone who's still healing. I want truth. Rayyan looked at him, and for the first time that evening, there was no shield behind his eyes, just exhaustion and hope. The truth is, I missed you long before I realized I had. Adil reached out, gently placing his hand on Rayyan's shoulder. The touch was quiet. Not a demand offering. I never stopped thinking about you, he said, even when I was trying to. Rayyan closed his eyes. For a few long seconds, they stood like that, a breath away from something dangerous. Not lust, something deeper, something fragile. Akash? But just as Adil leaned in, Rayyan stepped back. No, he said softly, shaking his head. Not like this. Not tonight. Adil froze. Rayyan's voice was calm, but it carried a tremor. If we do anything now, it'll be because we're lonely, not because we're ready. Adil wanted to argue, to say it wasn't like that, but part of him knew Rayyan was right. They were still standing in the aftermath of breakups, of silence, of lost years. It wasn't the beginning of something. Not yet. He nodded, slowly. Okay. Rayyan stepped back. The air between them, cooler now. Stay if you want. You can take the bed. What about you? I'll sleep on the couch. Adil looked at him, unsure of what to say. Everything felt unfinished, but not in a bad way, like something paused rather than ended. Rayyan, he said, before the other man turned away completely. Whatever it is, matters to me. Rayyan offered a faint smile. Then let's not ruin it. Without another word, he walked out of the room, leaving Adil standing alone. The door didn't close all the way. It remained slightly ajar, a crack of hallway light spilling across the floor like a line they hadn't yet crossed. Adil sat on the edge of the bed, listening to Rayyan's soft footsteps retreat down the hall. He didn't lie down. He didn't move. He just stared at that sliver of light, heart quiet but alert. Whatever had been building between them wasn't over. But it was fragile, now made of memory and timing, and all the truths they hadn't yet dared to say. Somewhere beyond the silence, the night kept moving forward. And morning, he knew, would come with its own kind of reckoning. The morning light seeped into the room gently, brushing across the bare walls like a second layer of paint. It was pale and unhurried, warming the cool tones left by the night. Adil sat up slowly, disoriented not by sleep but by memory. The bed beneath him was still, untouched save for the faint creases his weight had left. For a moment, he forgot where he was. Then he remembered the painting, the silence, the confession, the pause. He stood, stretching his arms above his head, muscles stiff from lying awake more than sleeping. The door was still ajar, that small, slanted gap. It hadn't moved all night, and somehow that felt like a message in itself. He stepped into the hallway, careful not to make noise. The apartment smelled faintly of paint and stale air. He neared the living room. He found Rayyan curled up on the couch, a thin blanket draped over him, one arm tucked beneath his head. His face was turned toward the window, the rising sun outlining the edge of his cheekbone. For a long moment, Adil just watched him. The vulnerability in that quiet sleeping posture made something twist in his chest. How many times had he wanted this just to be near him in the stillness of early morning? No expectations, no fear. Rayyan stirred. His eyes opened slowly. And when they met Adil's, there was no surprise in them, just recognition. And something softer. "You didn't sleep," Rayyan said, voice raspy. "Neither did you." Rayyan sat up, pulling the blanket tighter around himself. "Coffee?" Adil nodded. "Please." They moved around each other quietly in the kitchen, like old friends who had shared routines before. Adil leaned against the counter while Rayyan poured water into the kettle. The hum of the heating coil filled the silence. "I thought a lot last night," Adil said. Rayyan didn't look at him. "Me too." I kept asking myself if this is something real or just something we're both clinging to because it reminds us of who we used to be. Rayyan nodded, still not meeting his gaze. "And what did you decide?" Adil exhaled. "That I don't want to live in a memory. But I also don't want to walk away from something that still matters." Rayyan finally looked at him. "I'm scared. Of hurting you. Of hurting myself. Of building something too fast, only to watch it crack open like before. I'm scared too," Adil admitted. "But fear's not always a warning. Sometimes it just means we're standing at the edge of something new." The kettle clicked off. Rayyan poured water over the coffee grounds, letting the aroma bloom between them. He handed Adil a mug, then leaned against the opposite counter, both hands cupped around his own. "I can't promise I'm ready," he said, "but I can promise. I won't lie. Not about where I am. Not about what I feel." Adil sipped his coffee, the heat grounding him. Rayyan tilted his head. "Really? It has to be," Adil said. "We're not starting a fairy tale. We're starting from pain, from history. That's messier. But maybe it's more honest." Rayyan looked down into his mug. "Want to know you again. Not who you were when we were kids. Who you are now." Adil stepped closer. "Then let's find out." They stood in silence again, but this time it felt different, not stalled steady. As though they'd found a rhythm in the quiet, a way to hold each other without touching. Rayyan chuckled, shaking his head. "This wasn't supposed to happen. I just wanted help painting my room." Adil smiled. "Yeah, and I just wanted to see an old friend." Rayyan looked up, mischief flickering through his exhaustion. "Well, mission accomplished. And then some." Adil laughed, and it broke something open between them. Not a wall, something gentler. Like a window letting in air that had been shut out for years. Rayyan set his mug down and stepped forward. "We don't have to label this. Let's just ... exist. Together, without pretending it's nothing, and without forcing it into something it's not." Adil nodded. "I can live with that." Rayyan reached out. Not a kiss, not a pull, just his hand, open between them, palm facing up. An invitation. Adil placed his fingers there, folding them around Rayyan's. And just like that, the silence between them wasn't emptiness anymore. It was possibility. Asterisk, they didn't say anything else. There was nothing more to explain. They were still healing, still cautious, still learning. But they had chosen not to walk away. Not this time. And that choice, however small, was the beginning of something honest, something real. Asterisk.